Good morning and welcome to the 2021 CCDEH training series. My name is Jeff Lamore and I am the current president of CCDEH. The training series was developed by CCDEH's Professional Development Committee to make up for this year's cancellation of the CEHA conference. Each session will be recorded and CEUs will be available to all of you. The fee for each session is $25. Tim will bring up the video library. You can go to CCDH's video library where the sessions have been recorded and they're available to you. There's also other sessions available to you that you can watch for the fee that's prescribed in that. So that's available to you. There you go. In order to obtain your CEUs, you must complete and submit the evaluation form at the end of each session. So please make sure you enter your full name and email address. If you haven't completed prior evaluations, make sure you do that. The certificates will be issued by June 7th. The last day to complete any outstanding evaluations would be around June 4th. So please make sure you get that completed. Our next and last training session is next Thursday, May 27th. So please keep that in mind. There will be a question and answer period at the end of today's training session. So please use the Q&A function to submit any questions that you may have. I would like to thank Justin Milan, Cheryl Baldwin, Tim Snelling, and Freddie Adrian for their work on developing the training series. It's been a fabulous series thus far. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Freddie Adrian, Environmental Health Director with the City of Vernon and the Chair of the Professional Development Committee. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Freddie.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everyone for joining us. I think today we're going to be in for another excellent treat. So we have a great, excellent speaker that we're all looking forward to hear from. So with that, I'm just going to do an intro and then we'll let John. So we have John Wilson. John is the founder of CDL Training and Consulting that was established in 2004. He has served as a sergeant in a major California law enforcement agency leading a crisis intervention training unit. John has worked street patrol, investigation, and as an academy instructor, which include criminal law, impaired driving, and physical training. John has been he's been certified as a drug recognition expert, investigator, including narcotics, homicide, crime scene, sex crimes, auto theft, also wiretap operator, advanced rural and urban surveillance, TSA behavior detection, among other certifications that John also holds. Becoming a peace officer, John was on an outdoor adventure education supervisor for at-risk youth program with the Tulare County Office of Education. He also worked for a life-saving substance abuse treatment facility in Fresno County. John serves as a seasonal U.S. Forest Service wildland firefighter in the Sierra Nevada mountains. John is an honorable discharge non-commissioned officer, the U.S. Army veteran for the 75th Ranger Regiment and 25th Infantry Division, and also the Joint Task Force Full Accounting, which was in Vietnam. He's currently a chaplain assistant with the California State Guard. John is also, I think this is excellent, is an Ironman finisher, running 140.6 miles. I'm assuming this was in Hawaii.
No, it was in California.
In California. And also on top of it, an ultra marathon runner running about 100 miles. And the most it also has been in Nevada. John has a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from Columbia Southern University and is a U.S. Army veteran and chaplain assistant in California State Guard, as I mentioned. He has almost 30 years of military and law enforcement experience. John has dedicated a vast majority of his duty and off-duty time to learning and understanding biopsychology and has been able to create a wide spectrum of interesting and practical classes related to how our minds work. how it affects our lives and jobs. John has been involved in a deadly police combat shooting, has watched a fellow officer suffer gunshot wounds, and has witnessed the death of a fellow police officer. Sorry to hear that, John. John has been shot twice in the line of duty and has suffered a lasting effect. It is because of this and his past experiences that he dedicates his life to employee and public safety. So with that said, thank you, John, for making the time to do this. And I think we are all excited for you to be a speaker, and we can't wait to hear your presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen then, if that's good. And let's bring it up here. Make sure I do it right. Start stressing out, right? And I think we're up and we're ready to rock. Well, I can't see everybody, but if you know me and you know my personality, you know I wish I could see you right now. And you also know that I wish that we were in a live audience and I could interact and mess with every single one of you, but I can't. So I'm going to stick to the rules in this webinar. Tim will be taking your questions if you're in the Q&A or if you're in the chat. I'm not going to pay attention too much to that. I'm going to stick to what I want to talk about here. And so you have the PowerPoint up and I'm just going to go to town here. So there's the contact information right there on the title screen. So if you do need to get a hold of me, you can also look at the bottom of my screen, john@cblotac.us, and my number is 916-998-0502. And I'm going to actually mention that several times today, my phone number. It's very important. I'm going to start off by the very first thing saying that I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're, you know, the top of the totem pole or the bottom. Stress is real and it can destroy us and it can destroy our organizations. And so if you're experiencing stress, you need to tell somebody. Now, who? Well, we're going to talk about some of that, who you tell and when and how. But you just cannot contain it. You've got to tell somebody. And if you ever feel like hurting yourself, you need to tell somebody. That's a hard thing to say, and that's a taboo subject, and it's very stigmatized. But I'm not afraid to ask somebody or tell them, if you think you're going to hurt yourself, you need to say something. Also, if you know someone else who's experiencing stress, you need to have the courage to say, you know what, let's have a sit down. I'm noticing a few things and let's talk about it. And they may deny you 3 times, and that's okay. Keep trying. Sooner or later, they will open up and they will say, yeah, I'm experiencing some stress. Now, they may not tell you all about it, but at least we can get the ball moving and we can start getting some momentum and inertia behind their treatment. Do not be afraid to ask if someone wants to hurt themselves or another. In fact, don't even be afraid to use the word suicide. And I'm just pushing it all the way to the end right now. You know, pegging out the tachometer here and just saying this. Do not be afraid to look somebody in the eye and say, do you feel like killing yourself? And once you say it, you said it. You can't unring the bell, and it's out there, and it's okay. And you'll find out how just easy that is. And then the result of that, you just may save a life. So that's very important. No matter who you are, though, this is why I mentioned the totem pole, no matter where you're at in that, no matter what resources you think you have, a lot of times you just can't solve your own problems, and we do need help. And I've fallen victim to that, trying to be Mr. Tough Guy and I'm going to handle it myself and I got this. And it's through a maturity process of going through it that I learned that I couldn't handle it myself and I needed help. And I'll kind of get into that today. The last thing I want to say on this portion before I get started is in these notes is you're not alone. And in saying that you're not alone, I'm telling you, you're surrounded by people that care about you, whether you believe that or not. And I'm one of them. And so I want you to write down this number. And in fact, I hope you have a notepad. I have a notepad right here. I keep looking down at it because I take notes while I'm talking and I'll be thinking about things. But I hope you write down my number so you can see it under my name right there. You've seen it on the screen now twice. It's that important. You call me or text me anytime you want. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. in the morning. You call me and I'll get up if I hear the phone ringing and I'll take that call. And if I don't, you wait for me before you do anything to call you in the morning and go, well, okay, tell me what's up. Okay. So I put that out there for you guys. You already heard all the stuff that I've done and where I've been and everything else. So I'm just going to skip past this because I already said I don't want to, earlier I told Cheryl and Tim, I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about stress. So let's define it. A simple, very simple definition of stress is just a physical pressure, pull, or force exerted on one thing by another. And that's a pretty simple definition. We can use that almost as a metaphor for all the stuff that we deal with all the time, but we also want to talk about resilience. And what is that? Is being able to cope with that, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, and the toughness that it takes to get through that previous definition of stress. So resilience and stress really go hand in hand, and you really can't talk about one without talking about the other. Or you talk about stress and the lack of resilience, and how can we build it up? So we want to talk about that because you probably have been feeling it for the last year, year and a half now. We'll probably be pushing 2 years now of stress. That it's been a very interesting time. So I want to start off with this: is what you do and how you think today affects how resilient you'll be tomorrow. And you'll see a lot of pictures of myself that I put in here today because I want to really personalize this and say I've been through these things, and the things that I'm telling you, I'm practicing them, I'm doing them. And a lot of the things that I'm doing, even though I've been teaching this stuff for 17 years, I blew it off. And I'm really, truly learning now that how important some of the things I'm going to tell you today are, that we really have to use it. And you have to constantly remind yourself, and I am doing it. And so you'll see me in a lot of the pictures. So your attitude, what do you think about your stress? Do you go around and do we just complain about it? Or do we say, I'm going to do something about it? And my attitude is an attitude of resilience, of I'm going to overcome this. I do not care what you throw at me. I will overcome it. Do I have bad days? Do I have low points? You better believe it. And I get on the phone and I talk to the people that I think matter to me, that I need emotional or spiritual or, personal support. I'll get on the phone and I'll talk to those folks because I need them. But my attitude is still, even in my low moments, I will overcome, and you can't stop me. Now, I don't know what your attitude is, but you got to define that. You got to figure out what that attitude is and create a mantra and say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And everything's going to be okay no matter what. Now, I want to kind of get into some metaphors here. And let's just say we went out to dinner tonight. Some of you like Coke, some of you like Sprite and 7-Up, and some of you like iced tea. And let's say we sat down with someone, one of you ordered a Coke, one of you ordered a Sprite, and then I ordered an iced tea. And I said, but you know what? I'm going to put some sugar in it. And, I'm going to get a couple refills. And so you probably get a couple refills. I'm going to get a couple refills. Maybe let's say we have 3 refills while we're having a great conversation about stress and resilience. And while we're sitting there and I have my drinks and you get yours too, I start putting sugar in my tea. And I wonder, and I don't have a really good interaction with you guys right now, but I wonder at what point, and I can pretty much guess, once I get to about that 3rd sugar and I pour it in there, and we're talking real sugar, not like that fake stuff, right? I mean, I want the good stuff. And then about that 4th sugar, you're going to start looking at me all sideways like, what? How many sugars are you going to put in there, John? You want some tea with your sugar? Maybe by the time I get to that 5th sugar, you're going to be like, okay, your pancreas is going to blow up. So I'm sitting here, I got 5 sugars in my tea, and you're like, okay, what the heck? So let's look at a sugar and continue this kind of metaphor that I'll circle around and talk to you here in a second about. A sugar packet's about 4 grams in one package. And of those sugars, of the carbohydrates in the sugar, they're all from sucrose. So the carbohydrates and the sugar are the same. There's no complex carb in there. So it's just pure sugar, if that makes sense, sucrose. So I ask, and a lot of times in the live audience, how many carbohydrates do you think are in that apple right there? And then how many of those carbohydrates do you think are sucrose? So in other words, how many sugar packets? So let's take a USDA standard apple. You can guess right now. I'll give you a second maybe, and maybe I don't know if you're sitting there with somebody, but watch this. There's 14 grams of carbohydrate inside that apple right there. And 2 of those grams are sucrose, a sugar packet, a CNH. So what's that look like? There it is. It's a half a sugar packet. All right, so let's have some fun. Now we kind of got an idea where I'm going with it. A Starbucks Grande white mocha. How many carbs? How many sucrose? You might have one sitting in front of you right now. Here we go. Because remember, you might see your partner sitting there with a coffee, and if they put 5 sugars in their coffee, would you be thinking the same thing with my iced tea? Like, holy moly, how many sugars are you going to put in that coffee there, guy? Well, let's see what a Starbucks Grande white mocha has in it with carbohydrates and sucrose. Enough drama. Here we go. Yeah, 56 grams of carbohydrate, and 53 of those are from sugar. So almost all sugar. What's that look like? As I take a drink of my orange juice. All right. Dramatic flair. That is a lot of sugar packets. Let's get serious though. A Dairy Queen large chocolate malt. How many is that? 222 grams of carbs and 194 grams of sucrose, of sugar. And what's that look like? Now, listen, I don't have all day. My time is precious here. We only have so much time for this presentation. So I'm going to push the space bar right now, and it's going to go ahead and advance all this drama. What does that look like? It looks like that. I mean, I could have left and went and made breakfast and came back, and this would still been knocking off little sugar packets. But look at that thing right there. That's very, very scary when we actually look at what's going on inside that thing that we don't think about. I'm just enjoying my milkshake. And yet, look at all those sugar packets. What in the world does that have to do with stress and resilience? Well, let's go back to dinner. Maybe one of you out there ordered a Coke, and I put 5 sugar packets in my tea, and you said, oh, your pancreas is going to blow up, and you have your 12-ounce serving, and we're going to have 3 of those. So I already said, right? So we have 36 ounces of Coke, but look at this, 39 carbs and 39 sucrose. And again, what's it look like? So in just one serving, you've almost doubled what I had. In 3 servings now, you got 30 packets of sugar. So we ask again, how many sugars were too many? And when we watch someone put 5 in their drink and we're like, oh, wow. And we judge that person, but then we don't realize in our own drink just how much it is. So now the tea doesn't seem that bad, does it? And when we start breaking it down and looking at it, I say this, use those sugar packets, which is real. I mean, that's not even a metaphor. That's an actual thing that we do all the time. And we don't realize how much sugar is in what we're dealing with. But how much stress is in your life right now? How much stress are you adding into that cup of coffee or in that tea? And the real question is, are you emptying it? What are you doing about it? Because that's where resilience comes into play. So I'm going to look at both today. I want to show you stress and I want to show you resilience. So let's rock and roll. And the model that I'm going to use is called the General Adaptation Syndrome. It's a wave, looks just like that, as you'll see in the next slide. So watch this. The first phase of the general adaptation syndrome is the alarm reaction. And it's important to understand stress if we're going to beat stress. Just like we have to understand COVID if we're going to beat COVID, or we have to understand violence if we're going to beat violence. So here we are now understanding stress, a model of stress. In the alarm reaction, if you look right here at the very beginning, this is normal life and this is homeostasis. So in homeostasis, everything's normal. And all of a sudden right here, you get notified or something happens and you get told, hey, your house just burned down. And a lot of times, most of us will experience what's called onset shock. We're like, oh my gosh. And we just sit there and we don't know what to do. We just shut down for a moment. Some people don't. They just go straight into the alarm. And now we go from onset shock going down just for a very brief time. But then sooner or later, all of us will go into the alarm reaction. So we get, I guess, for lack of a better term or vernacular, we get jacked up and we get super excited. We get stimulated because now I have to deal with this big thing happen to me. So what does that look like in this right here, this alarm phase as time continues through this critical incident or this issue that you're dealing with? So the alarm reaction stimulates the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is that system that creates fight or flight. It's actually fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So there's actually a bunch of different things that happen. And it makes psychological and physiological changes in our brain. So you actually change. You're not the same person that you were before the emergency physiologically, and sometimes mentally as well, psychologically. And so we have these hormones. One's called CRH, which is corticotropin releasing hormone. That actually is released from the hypothalamus. It travels to the pituitary and it lights up the pituitary, and the pituitary releases ACTH. ACTH does 2 things in the context of this class today. ACH will stop your working memory. What does that mean? Your brain doesn't care what you did before. Your brain doesn't care what you're going to do in the future. Your brain cares about right here, right now. That's why people under massive stress make massive, really bad decisions and things that later on they regret. And then you're asking like, why would you do that? Well, I wasn't thinking ahead. Well, clearly you weren't. That's what ACTH does. It puts you in the moment so you don't care about the future or the past. You're just trying to get out of the emergency now. But ACTH also travels down to the adrenal glands and it turns on the adrenal glands to release adrenaline and cortisol. A few other hormones too that I'll talk about briefly. We all know what adrenaline is, but we don't really think about it in the terms that I'm going to say right now, in that it's a central nervous system stimulant. All it does is it lights you up. It doesn't create fuel. It doesn't allow you to run 100 miles, like Freddie was talking about. All it does is stimulate you to do that activity. But it's very short-lived, and it creates tachycardia, so the heart starts beating faster, bronchodilation, so you can take in more air. The skeletal muscle tissue, actually, the muscles get all the blood, and all the small things like your fingers and your face, all the blood pulls away from that area. And so you can imagine it's probably not too healthy, because that tier 1 blood distribution occurs where all the blood goes into the big major muscle groups and then into the heart, the brain, and the lungs. So you lose the blood to your stomach, you lose the blood to your intestines, to your liver, to your kidneys, everywhere. It's like, it just says, I need the blood right here in this area, and these organs are going to keep me alive for the next hour during this emergency. And we'll get into that. What are the effects of that? But let me tell you now what cortisol does. And of course, you can read, but what it does is it leaves the adrenal glands, goes out into the muscles. It tells the muscle proteins to break down into amino acids. And those amino acids are then converted into sugars through gluconeogenesis. So it adds to glycogen that's sitting in your liver already and sitting in your muscles. It starts the process of adding more sugar to this machine, right? To your brain, which takes most of that sugar, and then your muscles. Again, why is that important? Adrenaline is the stimulant that turns the system on and gets everything going. And then cortisol is the stress hormone that creates the fuel that sustains the fight. And that's very important. We'll see that here in a bit. All of this happens whether the stress is psychological, so you're reading an email or you open some mail or someone's saying something to you, or it's physiological, so that it's getting hotter in this room, it's getting colder, you're experiencing some sort of pain. It doesn't matter. The stress hormone doesn't know if, as I said yesterday in front of a group, it doesn't know if it's a saber-toothed tiger chasing you or your boss just texted you and said, come back to the office. Your body just experiences stress and it reacts to that. And if you really think about humans in general, this built up wonderful society that we have, that you guys are part of that glue that holds it all together, hasn't really been around that long when we speak in terms of, say, DNA and how our bodies have evolved to be who we are and to cope with stress. So your body doesn't say, well, that's an email. That's not a big deal. It's not a saber-toothed tiger chasing me. Your body says it's a threat. And what do I need to do to overcome that threat? Okay. In the alarm reaction, something else that's very important in a stress management class to mention is cortisol also does these three things right here. It suppresses your immune system. Your immune system is very expensive in terms of physiology. It's always working very, very hard. You can imagine you're being bombarded by things all the time. But when you go into this emergency state, your body actually starts suppressing that immune response because it takes too much physical energy in your body and too many resources. So that's not good. It increases blood calcium. Blood calcium goes up, and there's all kinds of different reasons. A lot of them, I take calcium, magnesium, potassium when I'm in an endurance event because they're lactic acid buffers and they're also electrolytes and they keep my system going. So your body's thinking the same way, like, I need to be an athlete right now. I'm going to experience something. I need to get away from this threat. And then the last one, oh, by the way, it increases blood calcium. Where do you think it gets that calcium? We'll get into that in a moment. And then inhibits gonadotropins. And this is an adult class. We're all adults, and this is about physiology. So this isn't inappropriate to say that a gonadotropin are the hormones and the chemicals that keep humans reproducing, if you follow me. And when that stops and we stop our normal human interaction, our normal healthy human interactions, hopefully, right, with other people, hopefully the people you love and the people that are around you, that can be a completely new stressor that you can experience that creates a hierarchical stress situation. We'll talk about that in a bit. In addition, though, to cortisol and adrenaline, we also have dopamine and endorphins, and we've all heard about it. Very, very interesting hormones. So I'm going to flip ahead, see if I made it. Nope, I didn't. Good. So I'm going to go back. Dopamine it does a lot of things. There's a ton of things if you look up dopamine, what it does. But in the context of this class, dopamine is once it surges into your system, allows you to go outside social norms and boundaries. It's a hormone that literally allows you to break the rules. Now you're thinking, well, why would that be? You can't think in terms of modern society. You have to think in terms of what are the rules if you're living out in the wild, as you developed as an organism on this planet. And if you think about it, what are the rules? The rules are you're not going to jump off that cliff, or you're not going to run through that thicket of thorny raspberry bushes. You're not going to run through those cactuses. But if that bear is chasing you, your body says, okay, I know I'm not supposed to do that. It's probably going to get me hurt, but I'm going straight through those bushes, and I don't care if I have 1,000 stickers on me later on. I got to get away from that bear or I'm going to get killed. That's breaking the rules. Now imagine if the same process happens now. I know I'm not supposed to say that to my boss. I know I'm not supposed to fire off that email, but if I get super jacked up, I end up saying something I'm going to regret later on. That's breaking the rules. That's running through the thicket of raspberry bushes. And so that's very, very important when we consider the effects of dopamine and what it does to us in a stressful situation. Also, endorphins are endogenous morphine. Endogenous meaning made inside the body, and morphine is a painkiller. And so we have these painkillers that run through our system. And in fact, being an endurance athlete, 2 years ago, I ran a 100-miler, and I had a really bad chafing situation. We're talking like bloody, like dripping blood type chafing. And it robbed me of my body's ability to maintain its endorphins and maintain pain. And my legs hurt so bad by the end of that race, I could barely walk. And then a lot of it was because I robbed myself because of this separate other injury. My body couldn't maintain it, and I ran out of endorphins. I wish I could have just had a shot with endorphins and just shoved it in my arm and called it good. Whoever invents that's going to be very, very rich, by the way. You can stop all painkillers, but we haven't solved that equation yet. And so I had to deal with it. Well, imagine you're stressed out in your life, and say for the last year, what if something's going on that you don't know about, that, normally you have endorphins there, you're stressed out, so you're pumping out all these endorphins, and it's masking something that normally if you were calm, you would go, ooh, that hurts. I don't like that. I need to go check that out. I need to go get that, I need to investigate that with a doctor. Okay, that's a very, very scary thing when you can't feel something's wrong. Then we have these things called fibrinogens. And fibrinogens are proteins. They link together like a chain link fence, and they trap blood and coagulate blood. And there's also other coagulants that are pumped out of the body into the bloodstream. And your body is really preparing itself for injury when you're under stress, because your body prepares when you're in fight or flight for fight, so combat, flight, egress, or trauma. So we say combat, egress, and trauma is what our body gets ready for when you stress out. Because again, it doesn't know that that's an email or a mortgage bill or your kid's report card or a saber-toothed tiger. And that's what's important. So your body starts preparing itself, like if I get cut, if I get scratched, if I get, a limb cut off, I can't bleed out for the next hour. I need to get away from that threat so I can start treating myself. And yet here you are, you read an email, and your body's pumping out fibrinogens and it's saying, oh, clot blood. Well, do we really want our blood inside of our body to start clotting on its own? No, because the more stress we experience, and then the more cortisol, we start gaining weight, because all that muscle tissue that gets broken down into sugar, when you're sitting at your desk and you're not using it, it gets converted. And it gets converted into a very, very important fuel source, fat. Fat's so important that, if we look at our women, in society, if the women in our society, your fat content goes below, 15, 12%, there's no more menstrual cycle, and we can't make more children. And so that whole cycle of creating more humans stops. And so literally our society needs fat, because the organism is not going to reproduce if it can't support a child. When we just look at that slide right there, it shows you that, yes, it's important, but what happens when we stop using it and it keeps getting stored and keeps getting stored, and day after day after day, our body goes from high, when we're younger, right? High muscle, low fat, and it switches. Even if you look the same, if we did a body composition test, we would see the change over life. And over life, with this hierarchical stress that we live in and day out, that happens. We're constantly fighting. Our body is constantly fighting that degradation of muscle, which is, now converting into sugar, which is storing as fat because it thinks maybe the stressor is not going to go away. And it doesn't know that it's just email and it's just work and it's just normal life. Maybe it thinks it's famine. Maybe it thinks it's bad weather. Maybe it thinks whatever in natural life. Anyway, more stress increases fibrinogen production too, and increasing the risk of disease, coronary and respiratory disease and stroke. And it's very scary. So, okay, it's just a little bit more doom and gloom. We're going to keep showing you the effects, the negative effects of stress as I go here. we have the brain, and I said that it changes both physiologically and changes physiologically in our body, but the brain also goes from the prefrontal cortex right here in the front of your head. As you can see, the neocortex, it says like a calculator, right? That's the thinking brain right here. That's where most of us are right now. We should be, at least. As soon as you get stressed out, though, the body moves over here. It calls it the mammalian brain. That's the amygdala. And the amygdala is where your fears and your emotions and your instincts live. So we start acting instinctive based off fears and emotion. And that's not good, right? I mean, you can imagine that that would affect how you act, how you decide and make decisions, and how you speak. Now, when we get super, super afraid, we just completely act and there's really no conscious thought. And that happens right here in the brainstem, and they call that our reptilian brain. Most of the time when we're stressed out, I mean, a lot of our society for the last year has been operating like in and out of the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So the front of the brain where executive function occurs into this emotional area. And that's a scary thing, right? We can't be operating in society like that. So that's the alarm phase. That's what's happening. Like we get all jacked up, and here we are now. We say, okay, we got all jacked up, and then now it's going to level off. And you can see it usually levels off, and then our body fights to get back to homeostasis, and so it should go back down again. But what if it's sustained stress and that dotted line just continues along and it doesn't stop? So that's what we kind of want to focus on. That's last year, right? That's now. So let me show you what goes up. Okay, so in our body, gluconeogenesis, I already talked about, goes up. In other words, turning muscle into sugar in the liver starts happening a lot. That actually is going to make your blood sugar go up. So you're constantly walking around with a high blood sugar. So you're ready for action. You're always ready to use that sugar, but that's also not healthy. We know this. Insulin resistance goes down so that your body doesn't burn up that sugar too quickly. So it wants to store it and not get rid of it too quick so that you have it for this emergency that you're experiencing, even though it's not really not the type of emergency where you have to be, running 20 miles, but it's still happening in your body. Your blood pressure goes up, but it goes up in certain areas. So remember, the extremities, the blood pressure goes down. But in here, in your head and your chest, in this area where your heart, your brain, your lungs are, that pressure goes up. And we need the blood pressure there to be stabilized so that we don't harden our arteries and create, a negative cardiovascular situation. So that's scary. I skipped blood sugar, already talked about it. Your gastric acid goes up. When you're experiencing stress, your body starts to go, okay, I need to burn fuel. Now, if it's acute stress and it's right here, right now, your body might eject that food, either end. But when it's sustained chronic stress, our gastric acid goes up because it says, I just need to keep eating. And any chance I get to eat, I need to be able to just hurry up and eat it and digest it. And so I can hurry up and eat some more. I mean, your body is this machine trying to keep up with the stress. So your stomach now starts pumping out acid to keep up with that desire to take on more fuel. Proteolysis is really linked to gluconeogenesis. Proteolysis is the breakdown of protein. So we already talked about that. Your heart rate is elevated when you're under stress because it wants to constantly move oxygen and fuel around your body to keep up with this emergency situation. Lipolysis. Okay, that seems like a good one. All right, I'm breaking down fat. Actually not. So when you break down fat, it's actually sometimes using fat as fuel, but now you have all this extra fat that's flowing around inside your cardiovascular system instead of being stored in a fat store, right? Like around your waist or your leg or your bottom or under your arms. Now it's released into the system. Well, what happens when you have a constant flow of fat and lipids flowing through your system is they get trapped and they get stuck in the form of plaque. And we all know what happens. That plaque builds up and then it closes off our arteries. We also have local motor activity goes up in a familiar environment, meaning I'm sitting right here at my desk, and if I'm stressed out, I'll start like cleaning my desk up and I'm constantly like fixing things. And the most familiar environment that someone will have is their own body. And so they'll start grooming themselves a lot and they'll start fixing things. And you see people, they start picking at their fingernails, they start scratching at their head and fixing their hair a lot and picking at their teeth and who knows what else. We see people do what we might consider strange behaviors. And that's because of locomotor activity under massive stress or nonstop hierarchical stress. But then we have neophobia, and that's the person who just backs off into a corner and doesn't want to talk to anybody and doesn't want to have anything to do with anyone. It looks very much like depression, which is behavioral despair. That's the next one. But neophobia is that very withdrawn. They don't want anything to do with anybody. And they kind of just close everybody out. So that's a huge thing to look at. Socially, if you have a friend that all of a sudden has just closed everybody off, they're probably under massive stress and they're experiencing neophobia. Also, we experience that in a novel environment where you've been somewhere where you're not if you go to a conference, you don't know anybody, you're probably not going to be talking to too many people unless you're super extroverted. So we want to look out for that. Grooming has something to do with local motor activity. I mentioned that. And so they're fixing themselves a lot. And then, of course, eating. But it's what we're eating. Typically, people don't eat, healthy macronutrients when they're under stress. What they tend to eat is rocket fuel. In other words, sugars and highly digestible fats. Essentially, all the stuff you find in the snack machine, and none of the stuff that you find in the fresh food aisle in the grocery store. So think about that food and that eating. That goes up to try to sustain that emergency response. Now let's look at what goes down. Bone metabolism stops or goes down, but it also, remember, your body robs your bones of calcium. So now our bones are actually weaker under this emergency. Immune function goes down. So I already talked about that. Slow wave sleep goes down. And that's where the things that we did the day before, all the neurological connections occur during slow wave sleep. And so we cease moving towards kind of higher function in our brain. We stop learning. We stop being better. We just kind of hold off where we're at, and we just kind of plateau in our lives when we're under stress. Wound healing slows down, and that has something to do with immune function as well. It may take a cut or a wound, twice or 3 times or 10 times longer to heal. Well, imagine what that does when we have gastric acids raising and getting higher, and all of a sudden now it won't heal, and all of a sudden you get an ulcer, and that ulcer turns into cancer or a bleeding ulcer, and you don't get it treated, and it can literally be fatal. Reproduction goes down. I mentioned that already. But also think of all the psychological repercussions of even the desire to reproduce that happens in our adult lives. Gastrointestinal blood flow slows down also. So we eat, but there's no blood going through our GI system like it is when we're healthy. And so now we're getting a backup. We're getting there's just a huge mess and a traffic jam going on. And that's not good at all because our body's redirecting blood flow to other areas. Our inhibitions go down, meaning we'll do things we normally don't do because of the dopamine. That's really bad socially and psychologically, because now we're going to do things that we're probably going to regret later on. And it was probably because of the stress. Collagen goes down. So when we're under stress, if we're not taking a collagen supplement, think about it. Collagen is the glue that keeps our entire body together. Our skin and our fingernails and our hair and our muscle, and our tendons and all the little connective tissues is all collagen. We don't want that to go down. Memory goes down, and that's because part of the slow wave sleep and the brain function. We just stop adding new memories. We stop making new neurological connections. And then pain goes down. And again, that can be really bad because we're not recognizing things that are wrong with our body. There's something I want you to write down. It's called the Holmes and Ray Stress Assessment. And this is a questionnaire, and it's got a whole bunch of questions on things that have happened to you in the last year of your life. And what you do is you check off each one, and they each have a score. And what it does is say, okay, if your score is, 150 or better, you're at slight risk, and it's slight risk for your health. If you're at 300 plus because you had all these things happen in the last, year, you had a divorce and you lost a parent and, you got fired from your job and you lost your home. And all of a sudden now these things are starting to stack up. You are a massive risk depending on your score for your health. So it's a great stress assessment, Holmes Ray. In fact, I'll be putting it in CBO Training Consulting stress section here in the reference section pretty soon. I'll talk more about that at the end. So now we move into the general adaptation syndrome's exhaustion stage, where we're just done. We've depleted everything. And really the question is, how long do you have when you get to that point? When you're in that orange zone of resistance, and then it's just going on and on and on, whatever your stressor is, could be this last year for you. The rhetorical question is, how long before that stopwatch says you're done, time's up, and it's just going to dump you down below homeostasis, below that green zone. Here's the other part, though, is you may have a major stressor in life, but what about all the other little stressors along the way that are adding to that stressor at the same time? So now the chart doesn't actually look like that. It looks like this. And something like this right here in this very small, so something tiny could happen, and then you're like, oh, hey, by the way, gas went up another 25 cents, and you're like, what? Oh, and you lose it, and you go into onset shock. And then you try to deal with it, and you're just like, I'm just done. And you're like, what do you mean you're done? So what? The gas went up another, quarter. We'll just deal with it like all of us would. And you're like, no, you don't understand. And someone just loses it. That's the chart right there. They're not losing it because of the gas price right here. They're losing it because that happened, and this happened, and this happened, and all these things happened on top of this big thing that happened, and they've just been trying to maintain, and they just can't do it anymore. And so that's what we look at when we look at exhaustion, and we say, okay, what are the internal factors? What's happening inside of them? There's psychological factors. What's happening inside their own mind? What's happening outside in their life, which is very common? What could be happening with their health? And then right here, compound stress. What is happening with everything combined that's important, and combined with environmental factors? Could be how your desk is set up and the route to your work and the traffic and the weather and everything going on in our lives. Is there feng shui? And so we have to address all of these when it comes to exhaustion of what are the signs of, or what are the reasons that this all happened. So let's look at a perfect day. Man, that's a lot of doom and gloom. I'm glad I'm like zooming through and talking quickly about it, because now we can move on. Here's a perfect day. And let's just say you are normal, you're not working graveyards. Right here, about 5 a.m.-ish, 5:30, your body's going to start pumping out cortisol. Have you ever woken up a minute before the alarm clock goes off? That's cortisol going, okay, we're the stress hormone. Let's wake up. Let's get going and think physiologically. If we're in nature, you got to wake up and you got to start moving, you got to start eating, and you got to start preparing for whatever the day has to offer. But then look at this, right around noon, it starts to level off. Now, this is homeostasis. This is when cortisol is at normal level. So here it's high. And then for the rest of the day until about 4, it's normal. But then right around there, it starts to drop off. And around 9 o'clock-ish, right, it should be dropping off and making you tired. And then melatonin and some other hormones should be kicking in, and you should start getting tired. And then we have this period where the cortisol is going, okay, let's shut down the machine. Let's allow a bunch of healing to occur, and using the nutrients that you took in the day before. And let's let the brain start making new connections from yesterday. So tomorrow you're smarter than you were the day before. Here's right here where we start screwing up. Right around 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock, we take a coffee, a 5-hour energy drink, a Monster. And imagine when we take that, we're actually pushing cortisol back up again. So now we're making ourselves go out of whack. So that's very important. And I want you to think about something. You add a stimulant to your system when your body's already naturally adding cortisol, which is going to add adrenaline and cause a stimulant effect. And then we double up on that when the sun comes up. Then we're adding more stimulant, and then we're crashing in the evening. And then we wonder why we can't get good sleep, and why we're not, why we can't focus, and why we're gaining weight. It's all the stuff I've already been showing you. So it's very interesting. If we look at a normal day, just a normal day, we wake up right here. We're already stimulated. Then we come to work, and we're dealing with all the stuff at work, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's, but the whole time we never go back down to homeostasis. All day long, we are up here and we're elevated. Then we get home and we crash and we go below homeostasis. And, right around here, someone says, let me tell you what your son did today, or let me tell you about this bill we got. And it's just like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone for 5 minutes so I can just deal with life. And so later on, I'll give you this chart if you need to see it. But what about a critical incident? When we're right here in our normal day and all of a sudden something big happens and we reach cortisol threshold where I just can't deal with it. It's like a mini version of the exhaustion stage. And then we just drop below homeostasis. And so our stressors in our lives were affected by acute and chronic stress. The question for you, though, is how long can you deal with that before you hit your cortisol peak and you reach exhaustion, and then you drop off and go below homeostasis with something called parasympathetic backlash, or a lot of people call it adrenaline burst. So I want you to realize that this is where your family and your friends and your team and your self-care come into play to keep that clock going so you can be the best person that you can be for as long as possible. So how do you beat it? Well, let's talk about it with all these right here: your attitude, conditioning, cue de-escalation, diet, fitness, sleep, sharing, everything right here, right now. Your attitude has to be this. You have to realize this. And a lot of people don't. Life is 10% what happens to you and about 90% how you react to it when it comes to how your body reacts to stress. Think about it. In fact, Mark Twain said it, and I'm going to bring up a quote that he said here in a moment. Watch this. You'll see it, and it's pretty funny. But when we deal with a stressor, when something happens to us, we have to take inventory. We have to go, okay, hold on. I know that I have onset shock. I just got super scared. I just heard about something that just happened to me. But what's really happening right now? If you take a logical inventory and get out of the amygdala brain and get into the prefrontal cortex brain properly, and we say, okay, let me take an inventory of me. Let me take an inventory of the people around me and my stressors. Let me take an inventory of the triggers. What's actually setting me off right now? And then let me look at my environment and let me make adjustments to that. all of a sudden now we can start moving towards the vaccination to this stress. I want you to realize that when predictability is down, when you don't know what's going to happen next, when you look into a dark room and you can't see inside there and no one will let you turn on the lights, but someone says go in there anyway, and that's of course a metaphor, or it could be actually real. When you don't know what's going to happen next and your predictability is down, then your physiology or your stress starts to go up. And just leave it at that right there. That's huge. But it keeps going, unfortunately. When our stress goes up, then our natural cognition, our natural way of thinking goes down. So we change the way we think. And one of the ways that we change the way we think is our cognition goes into worst case scenario. And that's when we start making mistakes. We start basing our decisions on worst case scenario instead of the truth. The people around you go, what are you doing? No, you're acting abruptly, or you're acting too harshly, or you're overdoing it. And you're like, no, man, you don't understand. And because your predictability is down, your stress is up, your cognition is down, and now your mistakes go up because of worst case scenario thinking, we have to ask ourselves, then what's the antidote for that? And the antidote is predictability. I mean, think about it. If you have an employee and you text them and say, John, come back to the office, we need to talk. You think that I'm driving down the road going, all right, the boss is going to give me an award. This is going to be a great day. Heck no. All the way back to the office, because I don't have a predictability based on your text, my predictability goes down, and then my stress went up, my normal cognition went down, and now I start thinking worst case scenario. Okay, what did I do? What did I say to somebody? What did I do wrong? Oh my gosh, what do they know? And then I start making mistakes. And what are the mistakes? The mistakes are my thinking. I walk into your office thinking, okay, let's go to war. What do I got to do? We don't think that positive way. In fact, human beings will remember 10 times stronger losing a dollar than finding a dollar. That means that we think about the negative way more, 10 times more than the positive, for survival. We got to keep up with the situation and the environment around us. So if you want your people to be healthier, if you want to be healthier, then we've got to create an environment of predictability. We tell people what's expected of them. Even the people that we serve in the public, make it easier for them to deal with us by giving them a degree of predictability. It relieves stress. But at the same time, when it comes to resilience, what happens when we don't have predictability? We have to train for this lack of predictability, because a lot of people out there are addicted to predictability. And when they don't have predictability and things don't go their way or the way they thought it would, they lose their marbles. So in resilience, we have to ask ourselves, am I addicted to predictability? Do I use predictability when I train, both in here, when I'm meditating on things and training my own brain and my own attitude, but also with training at work? Do we take people and put them in unpredictable situations to help them adapt, and then tell them why we did it and show them and give them tools to cope with that unpredictable situation? And then the bottom, are we comfortable in changing scenarios? I mean, the entire world has gone through this massive season of a lack of predictability. Most of the time, we fill the gaps. When we have no predictability, we fill those gaps with worst case scenario. And that's a huge deal. We have to overcome that. We have to stop thinking worst case scenario and start thinking logically and going, hold on, let me take a true inventory. Because Mark Twain said it himself. I've been through a great many catastrophes in my life, many of which never occurred. In other words, all these things he freaked out about, and they really never even happened. And some of the worst things that happen in our lives, we don't know that if we could see into the future and look back on our old self, we would have been like, if I could go back in time, I would have told myself, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. That why go through a great many catastrophes in your life if 90% of them aren't going to actually occur? So let's talk about Q de-escalation right now. What's that mean? That switch to turn this stuff off and on when we are experiencing critical stress or acute stress. One is that worry stone right now. And that means taking something that is an emblem, and a worry stone is something you can keep in your pocket and you rub it, but you also couple it with a mantra. And you tell yourself, it's okay. My future self is going to look back at this and say, you're okay. See, I wish I could have told you that before. I wish I could have visited you back in the future, come from the future and visit you in the past. And so we find a mantra with a worry stone, and the more we tell ourselves it's going to be fine, it's not that big of a deal. No matter how bad it looks, it's going to be fine. It's not that big of a deal. Then we take the physical action of rubbing that stone, couple it with the mantra, and we start to convince ourselves. And it gets to the point where all you got to do is touch that stone, and you know everything will be fine. There's another version. I have a picture of a mountain right here, and that's visualization. So you can be lying in bed at night and you can visualize walking up that precipice right there, but you visualize what kind of boots you have and socks and what color are the laces and what are they made of and what does my insulation layer look like and my base layer and my outer shell and my waterproof and what's the rope look like and what are the sounds I'm hearing. And you beg thousands of details from this scenario that you have in your head. It doesn't have to be a mountain, it could be anything. And what happens is while you're laying in bed or meditating, trying to, beg all these details out of this image that you've controlled and created with full predictability, you're not thinking about the stuff that's stressing you out. And it's a pretty amazing thing because the more you do that, the better you get at either one of them, the worry stone and the mantra or visualization. There's a picture of me that's before a race and one of my ultras. And I put the question there, what do you dwell on in your thinking? And for me, it's that 2 o'clock, you wake up at 2:45 a.m. and now you start going around the merry-go-round. You start thinking about those repetitive and intrusive thoughts. And I just learned to tell myself, that will be there in the morning. Let me think about that ultra race that I got going on. That's what I want to dwell on in my own time. I don't want the enemy to attack me in the middle of the night, psychologically at 2:45. I want to control it and I want to enjoy the things that I love. So I'm going to think about that race and the route and my nutrition and what I have to do to train and move forward with the things that I love. So it's another type of form of visualization. If I'm going to dwell on something, it's going to be what I choose. And I'm going to I'm going to overseed that field and put the plants that I want to grow in that field instead of the weeds that are growing in there. I'm going to overseed that star thistle and choke it out. Now, Fritz Perls said that fear is excitement without breath. And if you really think about it, stress could be fear, is excitement without breath. So let's look at it. If I could control in the midst of an emergency, if I could control my inhalation, the transition, the exhalation, even the pathway, nose or mouth, and the timing, then I could take control of a normal autonomic reflex, breathing, take control of it, and then take control of my physiology. I mean, I've done it in the middle of a gun battle, in the middle of a pursuit, in the middle of an interrogation. And all it is breathing in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, holding it, 2, 3, 4, out through the mouth, 2, 3, 4, and holding it, 2, 3, 4. And I'll repeat that 3 times. And the more you do that, Pavlovian conditioning kicks in. And when you get stressed out and someone says something to you, you just walk away and go, and you just start slowing it down. And did you know that when you inhale or you hold your breath, it slows your heart rate down? So if you hold your breath and then you slowly exhale, that slows your heart rate down. I actually said it wrong. When you're inhaling, it increases your heart rate because you inhale to start sucking all that oxygen in. Then you exhale, it's conserving. So when you hold your breath or exhale, it's actually slowing your heart rate. So if you want your heart rate to slow down in the midst of an emergency, just exhale and slow your breath down. So you exhale more than you inhale. It's that simple. But what if you're lying in bed in the middle of the night, though? You don't want to do that because that's what you do in an emergency. So we switch to 4-7-8 breathing. Look at it. I inhale for 4, my heart rate's going to go up. I hold my breath for 7, my heart rate's going to go down. Then I exhale for 8, and it's really going to go down. So I'm doing, 4 times more work getting my heart rate down than I am getting it up. So 4-7-8 breathing is amazing. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold for 7, out for 8, and then repeat it. But you can't do this in an emergency or walking around or driving because you're gonna pass out. This is what you do in the middle of the night. Let's talk for diet for a second here. We have to focus. We really do. And we've all heard it, so we all know it. We have to focus on our hydration. We have to focus on not eating stress foods. We have to think about anti-stress foods. And of course, I don't have time now to go through an entire diet, but really just stick to the things that grow and that are not processed. We know this. I put a gorilla on there because a gorilla, that big old strong animal right there, is a vegetarian. And last summer, my wife and I, we switched to vegetarian meals. Now, yeah, I still eat meat, and once in a while I have a delicious bacon cheeseburger if I want. But I also made the choice to go I'm 98% vegetarian right now by choice. And you know what? The changes are absolutely amazing. You will see all kinds of changes in your body throughout. So I implore you to think about your diet, think about hydrating so you can keep your body healthy, and think about the macronutrients and not feeding the system with that rocket fuel. Put the good fuel inside your body. And then we move into exercise, and I'm going to talk about this for like 3 or 4 slides. I know that everybody's out there have different body types and different issues going on. And so I say this, you've got to get out there and do something. So I start with walking. That's a picture of me walking through Death Valley. I walked from Badwater to Furnace Creek, actually Furnace Creek to Badwater in the summer, right through the middle of the valley. It was awesome. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to get out every day after work, though, and have a transition from your working time to your off time, and just get out there and move your body and do bilateral movement. Just move. That's it. But let's say you want to bump it up a little bit. Well, there's a doubt. And I'm showing you these pictures because you know that I'm doing it. I'm not being a hypocrite about saying these things. That's me running a 110K with my beard, and with the buckle, that's me getting a buckle after a 100-mile. And, again, when I'm out there running, it's a recharge. It's a reset. It's a physiological reset. And I'm not asking you to run 110K or 100 miles. I'm asking you to get out there, if you can, and you think you can do it, run a mile. And turn that into 2, and turn it into 5, and turn it into whatever you want. But turn it into something that you realize is a reset and it's healthy. What about things like this? You could get everybody at work together and go out and do a Tough Mudder. Tough Mudders are fun. And they're fun because they only last about 8 hours, but you get to train up for it for 6 months if you have the time and you want to do it. And so that 6 months of healthy living and thinking about it and anticipating something fun and laying in bed and thinking about what you're going to do, instead of laying in bed and thinking about all the stressors you have in your life, is absolutely amazing. A great time. So obstacle courses are great. And I'll tell you this, if you're sitting here behind the screen thinking, well, I'm not going to go to no obstacle course, I'm this or I'm that, or I have an issue with my weight or my body type or what I look like. Let me tell you what, every type of person is out there. I've seen every type of person running ultra marathons. I've seen every type of person out there in obstacle course. And there's no more attractive human being than someone that's out there having fun, smiling, having a good time, and doing healthy things. I don't care what you look like. It's your attitude that makes you attractive. So do not let that be a hindrance to getting you out there. I did do Ironman, and Freddie mentioned that. And again, I mentioned Ironman because there's low impact exercises, swimming and cycling. If you can't get out there and run or walk, that's okay. There's other things you can do, and you can text me and I'll give you 1,000 different things that you can do to get your body healthy. Now, I don't want to put a picture of me doing yoga, so I put this random lady up here, but walking, stretching, yoga, amazing. And what about this? Progressive relaxation. You can literally lie on the floor after I'm done talking and flex your calves and relax them, and flex your calves and relax them, and flex your quads and relax them, and do that rhythm. Do your hamstring, do your buttocks, do your lower back, do your abdominal region, your diaphragm, do your chest, do your arms. By the time you get done, you will feel amazing. You can also do that while you meditate, or you can just lie still and meditate. Research meditating and what it means about letting these intrusive thoughts come and go and on their own, and combine it with the 4-7-8 breathing. And I'm telling you, amazing things will occur. Let's talk for a second here on sleep. Sleep has to become routine to become effective. So if you don't have a sleep time that you say, I go to bed at this time and I wake up at this time. Now, listen, if you have newborns or children, then that sucks. Too bad for you. Welcome to, being a parent. That's all I have to offer for that. But all jokes aside, you got to get a routine in. We do it for our children. Why don't we do it for ourselves? Don't think in bed. And you know what I mean now by that. Don't dwell on things, especially work. Do not think about work in bed. Your sleep space is sacred. Let's talk about some quick healthy supplements. These will work different for everybody, but valerian is amazing. It smells like dirty socks. Valerian is an amazing supplement that just knocks me out, but valerian gives me crazy dreams, so I don't like it. GABA also kind of slows the machine down, and it just gets all the little sparking thoughts all over the place, and it just kind of just lets them trickle down and relax. It won't make you feel like a depressant. Chamomile is an anti-inflammatory, but it also calms. And I do a chamomile tea every night, just chilling out, relaxing. And you can drink probably 10 of those things, and it's not going to make you drunk. It's not going to make you loopy. It just somehow relaxes the brain. And then one that can make you drunk if you take too many of them is kava. But if you just take a single serving like a tea, Walmart has kava, and kava is amazing at just relaxing the body. I strongly suggest you don't use alcohol to relax. At least an hour for every drink. Give yourself an hour for every drink before you don't, like the whole nightcap, taking alcohol before you sleep messes up your sleep rhythm. I don't have time to get into it too much right now because we're about to wrap it up. But also keep the caffeine at least from 2 p.m. off. You know where your cortisol starts to drop off around 2 p.m. Don't set it back up high on the chart. Allow cortisol to start relaxing. And then also blue light. Make sure you're not sitting on your phone in the evening. When the sun goes down, no more blue light. So your TV and your electronics, like your computer and your phone, should have a filter that will automatically start converting the blue light into orange light. Because what happens is the blue light wakes up the brain. You want blue light in the morning, and then you want orange light in the evening. All right. So I'm getting close here, Tim. We're about to wrap up here in a second, okay? And I'll blame it on someone else somehow. I need everybody to understand that you have to relate to your close friends and your family. It's super, super important. That's a picture of my wife, but I have a ton of friends that I go out for a walk or I call on the phone and I talk and I listen. You have to learn to talk and express yourself, but you also have to listen when people are talking to you. You need to take breaks. I already mentioned meditation and yoga. Again, that's me in Death Valley. That's one of my spirit places. And I take a lot of breaks, but you on a daily basis have to take, for every 90 minutes, you got to stop. You got to stretch. You got to walk. You got to socialize, not talk trash. And you got to drink water and hydrate for at least 10 minutes. Get up and move your body and get everything flowing. But sometimes you got to plan big breaks. Every year, my buddies and I, we go to Death Valley. You're not allowed into the camp unless you have a kilt on, and we wear our kilts. It's our thing, and we spend a few days out there, and we just take huge, giant breaks, big ones. This again is in Death Valley. These two photos are 20 years apart. We're in the same jacket with the same guy in the same spot. Plan those breaks and dwell on those. Make your spirit happy. Do whatever break that makes you happy. I love Death Valley. I love riding my motorcycle and running in, but what does that mean to you? Are you making yourself happy? As I close here, are you accepting change? Are you accepting those changes in your life, those lacks of predictability? And then, are you using your employee assistance program? That's a picture of me doing an EKG, and I got help, and I got a bunch of neat stuff. Look at what EAP does for you. Do you have the EAP card in your wallet right now? 2 of them, one that you can give yourself and keep for you, but also one that you can give to your partners and your people. Do your people know how to access EAP? Do they know the number? Do they know where to get the poster? Are you using your family and your sources to your advantage? You have your work family and you have your personal family. So I want to say this in closing before we finish, and I'm going to let Tim ask a few questions. We'll go 5 minutes over. Hopefully it's not too much. In closing, I want to say this for you, for your friends, the people that you care about. Are you recognizing when something's not right, and are you confronting it? Are you saying something? Do you have the courage to be honest to somebody and say, hey, I see something, what's up? And are you able to be a good listener instead of just sitting there trying to solve it for them? That's important. Don't try to solve it, just let them talk. And then can you provide? Do you have the capacity to provide someone with resources? And for you, change the way you think about problems. Identify those triggers and the sources of stress. Can you de-escalate acute stress appropriately? Can you talk to people, your family and your friends? And do you trust professionals? Before Tim comes up, I want to just tell you this. That's my son. I didn't trust professionals because around 3 years old, he was diagnosed with autism, and I was completely resistant to the entire thing. I failed to believe that the professionals were correct. But later, I actually did trust, and they put him through a bunch of programs. And now that's my son as he's growing. Here's one that's just taken a couple months ago, and they're already actually getting ready to diagnose him not with autism. His brain has evolved. He's developed as a teenager. He's doing great on the mountain bike team. They both hold over 3.5 GPAs, all because I trusted professionals. And this is pretty amazing because this right here, you're always speaking without saying a word. The people around you are saying things to you. You're saying things to other people. Maybe today's the day that you need to break that silence. And so as I close, before I allow Tim to ask a few questions, just want to play a quick video, and then we're going to let Tim ask some questions. Or in fact, let me reverse it. No, I'm going to play the video. Here we go. Here we go. we've been through a lot in the last year. And as we close, I'm going to leave my information up here and just let you know that you can call me, text me, do whatever you want, email me anytime you want. There will also be information available on my website. But Tim, you have some questions for everybody? I think it's automatically.
Wow, thank you, John. Amazing presentation.
I apologize, Tim, also for taking your time and going over for a few seconds there.
No worries. Excellent information. Everyone appreciates it. We still have a lot of people staying on to hear your thoughts on a few questions.
Yeah, and I'll stay on as long as they want. If you keep asking questions, I'll be here.
Okay, great. So get your questions in, folks, on the Q&A. And one of the questions we had from Bill Prinz, he asks, what are your thoughts about coffee? Does having a limited amount of coffee, 16 ounces in the morning, have negative impacts on stress and sleep? You know, just kind of give us your thoughts.
Yeah, in the morning, it's important to realize that 16 ounces is nothing, right? A cup of coffee in the morning is not that bad of a deal compared to having a couple in the afternoon. Going at 3 o'clock to Starbucks is not cool. But if you need that extra boost in the morning, then A-okay. But here's the other part. It's part of a tradition for your body that releases dopamine. And if it makes you feel good and it's something you enjoy, don't take that away from yourself. Use that to your advantage. Just don't overdo it. Don't turn 2 into 4 into 8 and then be drinking coffee all day long, because that's what's hurting you. Right. So yes, enjoy your coffee and turn it into not just a routine, but a ritual. It's your thing, right? We all have that and we all need that.
Good. I like the sugar packets analogy you used early on in your presentation. And I'm just wondering about stress. I know for me, I'm not very good at being aware of my own stress level. And so you kind of give some indicators that we might keep an eye on, or I might keep an eye on. So can you just talk a little bit more about how I can be more self-aware of when I'm stressed, if I'm not fortunate enough to have someone tell me they think I'm stressed?
Right. Well, a lot of times the inventory is important. But how do we take an inventory? Well, journaling, looking at your own text and how you're responding to people, maybe taking a self-inventory of how you're responding to the world around you. Sometimes you can go, oh, wow. Because when you do that and you take inventory, you're using the proper part of your brain, the part that says what's good and what's bad, not just how do I need to react to an emergency. But I also tell you, Tim, that if you go out and you start a new routine, like going for that walk, what you will notice that will give you the indicator is the contrast. You'll say, wow, I went for a walk and I feel really, really good. Or I stopped drinking coffee late and I feel really, really good. Or I started stretching or doing yoga. And it's doing the healthy activities, eating better. When you switch to, say, vegetarian, if you choose to do that, all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, why do I feel so good? And why did I feel so bad for so long? And why did I allow that? So the best way to see the indicator is the contrast. Start treating you better for you, and then reap the benefits, and you'll notice it.
Cool. I know that when I've sometimes said to someone, I'm a little afraid sometimes to mention to someone that, gosh, you seem kind of stressed, or is it possible that you're stressed? I feel like I'm walking on eggshells as I bring that up, and that just sort of makes it worse. And so how might I do that in a way that can be productive?
So remember, a person under stress is going to be in the amygdala brain, and they'll also be flooding with dopamine and cortisol. And they may say or do something that they may regret later on. But that doesn't have to be a barrier between you saying, hey, I can tell something's up. You know, I failed. There was I went on a trip with a good friend recently, and he just wasn't right. And I failed to address it. I just coped with him. Later, I found out this major life event occurred, and I was like, doggone it. I lost a perfect opportunity to sit him down around the campfire on this trip we were on and say, hey, man, I'm having a great time, but I'm noticing something. Something's not right. What's going on? And 99% of the time, the person's going to go, nothing, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But you know that's not true. And you go, okay, you can push it, or you can ask the next day or an hour from, you go, no, I don't know, man, something's not right. And it's just like advertisement. There's a reason why you get bombarded with the same commercial over and over, because they don't know when they're going to hit you in the right moment. You don't know when you're going to hit them in the right moment. So you have to keep trying. Do not be afraid to ask the hard question. It's completely 100% okay. And they will never say, I hate you because you tried to help me.
Yeah.
They may say that in the midst and say something off key, but later in the long run, do not be afraid to ask and tell someone something's not right. How can I help you?
Yeah, how dare you say I'm stressed? You're stressed. You might get that
You're
kind
like,
of
darn right I am.
reaction.
And let's get through this together. I'm here for you. And
Yeah.
sometimes people just need to know that, and maybe they'll blow you off, but later, an hour later, when they calm down, or 6 hours or a day later, they go, hey man, I want to thank you for reaching out. I do have an issue and here's what's going on. Something like that. You never know.
Cool. I
It
know
could
that.
save someone's life, not to be melodramatic.
Right on. We've all experienced that unjust email that we've received. It's like, how dare you? And it just like, I just get infuriated with the inaccuracies, and someone's blaming me and someone's calling me out. And it's like, I just want to fire back. And that moment is sort of a dangerous moment, right? So
absolutely. That's that acute stress where your cortisol, your dopamine that allows you to go outside social norms is at its highest. That's when you get up and you go, wow, that's a pretty fiery email. I think it's time to take one of those breaks John talked about. I'm going to go hydrate. I'm going to go stretch. I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to go socialize. And when I said don't talk trash, meaning you're not going to go, hey, Tim, let's go for a walk so I can go talk trash about Cheryl who sent me that email. No.
Right.
It's Tim, let's go talk about our life and our kids and the trips I want to do. Let's just not talk about work at all. Then when you come back, you're in a different space. And you're really not in a different space. You're in a different physiology.
How'd you know that the email was about Cheryl? Gosh, okay. Well,
I know.
Okay, well, John, thank you so much for this great presentation. I'm going to turn it back to Jeff, who's going to wrap us up and talk about our next adventure. Take it away, Jeff.
Okay.
Hey, John, thank you very much. Great presentation, great information in there. It definitely is very powerful and very much appreciated. We do greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome, Jeff.
And with that, our next and last session is also with John, and it is on the I believe with John on the 27th. Looking forward to that. Hopefully we have just as great of a turnout as we did today. And please complete your evaluations, and we will see you next week. Thank you all. Anything you want to add, Freddie?
No, I just want to add that this was great. I personally enjoyed it. Really helpful. And thank you again, John. We'll look forward to next week.
Yeah, it was fast and furious. I probably have a habit of trying to, I'm so like, I want to get you guys as much information as possible. So I want to remind everybody, I will be updating the website, and I'll be putting a lot of stress management information up there. And I will be sending Cheryl the quick reference guide so that she can probably beam it out to everyone else. I'm sorry, Cheryl, I just gave you a bunch of work, but anyone is welcome to go to my website and email me. There's a form that says I want this reference, and we can take that off of Cheryl's shoulders and you can just put it on mine. So either way, I mean, it's out there. If you need help, you got it. And remember, you can call me anytime you want, anybody.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.